So when I've been walking around the streets of Davos and introducing myself as a Greek, I get one of two responses. The first one is, I've been to Greece. The second one is, I would love to go to Greece. So if there's one thing that's undeniable about Greece and the global stage, is that it is a massive tourist destination with a brand that transcends borders and has really transformed the country already. But one of the most interesting things about tourism, you see, is that in this changing world, when we talk about big concepts like sustainability, digital transformation, it's one of these sectors that oftentimes I think is forgotten, and also one of these sectors that presents some very specific and unique challenges, but some of the most creative opportunities for growth and transformation. So this is going to be the theme of our last panel for today's discussions in Greek House Davos, and I'm really excited that we have a fantastic panel with us. I'm going to introduce them one by one first before I give them each the floor. So we have Mr. Dimitris Fragakis, who's the Secretary General of the Greek National Tourism Organization. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have Riccardo Lambiris, who's the Chairman of the Board of Directors of Athens International Airport. Pleasure to have you here. Lacey Hunter is appearing on the stage for the second time, I believe, who's the co-founder and director of growth and partnerships and finance for Proxico, a fantastic product that's revolutionizing mapping and navigation. And lastly, we have Maximilian Martin from the Resource Alliance and founder of Impact Economy and global head of Philanthropy, Lombard and SA. Thank you so much for being here. So I want to start by giving the floor to Maximilian. And sort of ask you to set the pillars of our conversation. So, you know, we know that climate action is really urgent, and sustainability is something we have to embed in all parts of our industries. So how do we build a new model of sustainable tourism, and how are the concepts of sort of sustainability and tourism compatible or not, if you will? Let me pass you the microphone first.
I have children, so I can yell if I have to, but if I don't have to, it's even better. So it's a pleasure to be here. And, you know, I realize you've all had a long day, so I think one commitment we should make collectively is to make it as fun and interactive as possible. And I think this topic lends itself to that. So first of all, maybe, you know, what qualifies me to be on this panel? I mean, first of all, I don't speak Greek, but I've been to Greece. In fact, I love Greece. My best friends are Greek, and that's why I will actually, you know, give you some input as someone who really cares about the country and wishes you well. Now you can, you know, do whatever you want with my input. Now, basically, when I get hired somewhere, normally it's because something doesn't work. So, you know, I get onboarded to build a new value proposition, to restructure something, and so on. So I think I'll try to be a bit controversial here. First of all, tourism and sustainability. I think we all know that tourism is fundamentally, you can make it more sustainable, but you know, when people move from A to B who wouldn't have to move from A to B, it's going to be very challenging to make this truly sustainable. So I think let's not give ourselves the hard task of being 100% sustainable, because otherwise, you know, there will be no tourism, and I would argue that people actually have an innate need, you know, to move from A to B. That said, you know, sustainability is really a mega trend. You know, it affects tourism like many other industries. The challenge is that tourism is a bit different from other industries. Yes, it's one of the top sectors in international trade. It's a wealth creator. You know, it has positive impacts. It creates jobs. In Greece, before the pandemic, for example, 759,000 jobs depended directly on tourism, and the economic contribution to the GDP was 38 billion euros. So that's not nothing. You know, it's something that's worth looking after, you know, as an asset or as an activity. It promotes different gender roles as well. You know, it creates opportunities for empowerment, which is important. And it does also, you know, provide an economic business case for protecting heritage, cultural heritage. Because often, you know, we grapple with the fact that it's difficult, in fact, to protect heritage if the government has to pay for everything. So there are a lot of positive things. Of course, the negative things mainly relate really to pollution, overuse. You know, if one of you considers running for mayor somewhere, you know, remember that in Barcelona, you know, someone critical of over-tourism made it to mayor. So, you know, you can build a career on that if you want to. And, you know, some of the culture changes may be unwanted because it's too quick. So I would say a point of departure is this is an industry that's complex, that's really important. It's very important for Greece. Now, the challenge that I personally find is that many of the arguments that we hear about sustainability are really morals based. That's good. Most of us want to be good people most of the time. The problem is not everyone wants to do that. So I think I'd like to give ourselves the task to think a bit harder and say, what can we do to make this actually attractive to people so it fulfills needs other than feeling good about yourself, which is a subset of the consumer demand. The LOHAS exists, the lifestyles of health and sustainability. People probably, like most of us or all of us in the room, who pay more for a product that is sustainably sourced, that is responsible, but not everyone does that. And if you see the hordes on the beach, maybe they don't. So that's not good enough for me personally as an argument. Now, how can we see COVID as an opportunity maybe to rethink some things? I think what we've seen in motion in many sectors, especially also in tourism, is that, we were forced to rethink things. We had, tourism is a real success story, right? In 1950, you had 25 million international arrivals. 2018, you had 1.4 billion. Wonderful, globally. Well, problem is that dropped by 1 billion during the pandemic. 100 million jobs globally at risk, tourism jobs. And total revenue lost is estimated in the order of 1 trillion. So clearly, this is an industry that will need to reinvent itself. How can we factor sustainability into that? Point one, operations. Those of you who are experts and those of you who don't probably also know, because it's difficult to hide from that fact. There are agencies, UN agencies, governments who produce guidelines, checklists, master plans, and so on. All of that exists. Much of this is really good. So I would say, point one, operations, yes, let's try to be systematic where we can. Fortunately, many clients indicated after COVID that they're more willing, they're more conscious, I guess, of the fragility of life. They're more willing to ask and check, maybe not, having your towels changed every day, checking to what extent is the hotel itself eco-certified and so on. That's all fine, but I would call this innovation in the box. So my argument would be innovation in the box, let's do it. It's doable, it's feasible, we know how to do it. But my argument would also be probably there's still a missed opportunity. And here now I'll venture into more dangerous territory because I'll give you some views on Greece, but again, coming from the heart. If you look at the history, I would say, of Greek tourism promotion, the islands are beautiful. But the fact is that most of the promotion has gone to Crete, to the islands, and at the same time, the Peloponnese is beautiful as well. Not yet, but we're facing climate change. We're facing higher temperatures. You have a relatively short season, on the islands, July, August, whereas, on the Peloponnese, there's some EU-funded, I know the EU is not so popular with everyone, but anyways, some EU-funded projects, right? That's for the next topic. There's some EU-funded projects, for example, to rehabilitate trails, to help local communities to cater to communities of demand that are maybe more bourgeois, that can travel outside the vacations of the kids and so on. So I think there's a massive opportunity in Greece to develop to a larger extent the mainland. And the question is, of course, always the how do you actually do it? Again, I'm sure much of this is in motion. In fact, I know of some EU-funded projects, some local projects, there's some good stuff going on. The question is, how do you scale it, how you systematize it? It seems to me that one way of doing it is certainly, and that's the role of the rest of the panel, I guess, to provide this sort of large scale planning, provide incentives and so on. But I would also say, because my role is I really work on innovation. I once had the pleasure to conduct a workshop on innovation with the cabinet of your former prime minister. Unfortunately, a few weeks later, they fired most of the ministers, so it wasn't very useful, actually. That was Mr. Papandreou at the time. So it is, about thinking what kinds of incentives can you create to have innovation bubble up. Startups, young people want to do things, they want to be entrepreneurs. Greece has competitive advantage in tourism. Again, a lot is certainly being done. You're an entrepreneurial people. We see this everywhere, including in Greece, but also abroad. So I think my proposition would be, let's look on the one at what can be done, again, to get innovation in the box right, lower the carbon impact and so on. have maybe a regional strategic plan, but also asking what can be done to really unleash the power of entrepreneurship, of innovation that you have in Greek society. And I'll stop here because the goal was not to have a monologue. But it's great to be here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. It was an excellent way to open the discussion, not only because I think you framed the debate really well, but you mentioned the Peloponnese, which is where I'm from, and that's the best way to win the heart of any Greek. We're very localists. We love our country, but we love specifically our regions even more. So I think it's a great point now to take a lot of your thoughts and see what has Greece been doing to move to that direction. And I think, Mr. Fragakis, we already had a challenge of sort of moving our tourism industry into a more sustainable route. We know that it's compatible. And while this was happening, we had COVID. I think we were all very scared that the pandemic would really make our tourism, the backbone of our economy, if you will, sort of knee down. And we saw that it was much more resilient eventually, and I think that was a great success story for Greece, that it had tremendously successful summer seasons, at least during the pandemic season. So I'd like to hear your outlook about how did Greece sort of respond to both of these challenges? One, the pandemic, and secondly, our attempt to make our industry more sustainable and more sort of forward-looking, if you will.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's a great honor to be here today. It's my first time in Davos, and I think it's a happy coincidence that it's the first time that we also have a Greek house here. So we have to congratulate all of the ministers that support this effort. And I would like to say one word for a person that believed it 2 years ago. We discussed it in GNTO outside. I think, Alexandra, you were there too. We were talking about a Greek house in Davos, and this person is Irini Vandaraki. And I would like to thank and congratulate her for her efforts in order to be here today. Hello, Irini. Hello, Irini. This is Irini. The person that we.
The camera as well.
Yeah, this is Irini. So, thank you, Irini, for the opportunity. First of all, let me point out what Greek tourism really means. What is really Greek tourism? It represents the 25% of our GDP. 1 out of 4 euros that Greece is produced, they are produced from tourism, directly or indirectly. 700,000 people worked in the sector, and we are in a moment now that we are looking for 55,000 new jobs, that we can't find people to work in tourism. It's so important for some regions and some areas that there are regions like Southern Aegean, for example, that almost 55% of the local GDP comes from tourism. You can imagine what happened when in March of 2020 tourism shut down. We had a record year in 2019 with 32 million people, visitors in Greece, 19 billion of income from tourism, and in a few months we return to zero. But it proves that Greek tourism is a really strong sector of Greece. But from resilience of this time, we have to go to sustainability the next 10 years. We did a lot of things those 2 years. Mr. Georgiadis knows very well the effort of the Prime Minister and the government, the 2 years of the pandemic, the 2 hard years of the pandemic. In 2020, just 2 numbers. I will give you 2 numbers. In 2020, we tried to open tourism in Greece. We were the first and the only country that tourism worked for 3 months, and the income was 4.6 billion. It's a big amount, believe me, for 2020, without vaccines, without medicines, without nothing. And after the second lockdown, we reopened tourism, and we get a record it's a European record of 55% of the income of 2019. 10.6 billion euros. So we did a lot. And the first thing that we achieved all together with a great effort of cooperation between all ministries, secretaries, general secretariat, and the public and the private sector, everyone, was that we enforced the brand of Greece abroad. We had the opportunity to enforce the brand of Greece, and we did it. Not only because we had several campaigns all these 2 years, but because we know what to do. And a lot of countries asked us to give the knowledge that we had to them in order to use them the next years. I hope that we are not going to need to use them again. So we're in a tipping point these days, these years. We have to achieve sustainability, but in my opinion, sustainability is something wider than protecting the environment or the cultural heritage. I think we have to spread the income of tourism all over Greece. You know, this is the big effort of Greece the next 10 years. Only 4 out of 13 regions have serious incomes from tourism. The other regions, they don't have so much income. So I think that the biggest effort of us, and I think this is real sustainability, because we have to have close the society to tourism. We have to involve people in tourism. We have to show them that they can work in tourism and make a serious income from tourism. So I think the biggest challenge for the next 5-10 years is to spread tourism all over Greece. That's why you talked about campaigns and promotion. You know, this is the first time in history of Greece that we had a promo campaign abroad about the Greek winter. That Greece does have a winter. Nobody believed that Greece does have a winter, but it does. So we have a lot of campaigns running on this strategy. We have also a campaign for city breaks. It's a Greek weekend, the Greekend, as we say it. Go to YouTube and see it. So to resume, this is the biggest strategy of Greek tourism, I think, the next 10 years.
Interesting that there was quite a bit of overlap, I think, in your ideas, and seeing that Greece is moving towards the direction that Maximilian sort of pointed. So here's one component of tourism that I think was definitely affected by COVID, and also is a big hot topic in terms of sustainability, and that's the aviation industry, right? So a lot of people will reach Greece by plane, and planes for a while were prohibitive because of COVID. Then they became a very bizarre new experience, and for a big chunk of the population, they're becoming the sort of controversial / slightly unpopular method of travel because of the carbon footprint. So I'd be very keen to hear Mr. Lambiris' take on the aviation industry. How can it really respond to the challenges of both this post-pandemic world, if you will, but also the new sustainable reality that we want to build? Is actually aviation compatible with sustainable tourism?
Okay, thank you. If I may move to the podium.
Sure, please.
Thank you. So before I start on the topic at hand, a great Davos is fantastic. Honestly, I'm impressed. The level of investors, the level of innovation here, the support of the ministers, it's amazing. And I think, to echo what Alex Patelis said, I think it's one of the first steps to get to investment grade. And like Adonis Georgiadis said earlier, more than 100 investors are coming to Greece. So this is absolutely fantastic. I'm very happy to be here. So, you may have heard that in a recent study, when Europeans were asked whether they would pay more to reduce the footprint for travel, maybe not surprisingly, the answer was divided. 30% for and 32% against. It may ring a bell, huh? Why is this important, you may ask? Well, if we are to be successful in our global sustainability journey, it means that people need to be fully on board. And if in Europe still support is not what it should be, I really dread to think what happens in the rest of the world. The message should be clear, concise, and definitive. There is no way back, and every little bit helps, whether attitude change or major infrastructure investments. Global aviation CO2 emissions in 2019 reached 1 gigaton, or roughly 3% of global fossil fuel-related emissions. It is estimated that airports contribute just about 5% of total aviation emissions, effectively 0.15% of global fossil fuel-related emissions. So, any efforts made by airports may seem to be, well, a drop in the ocean. This is not correct. Every little bit helps. At the Athens International Airport, currently the only neutral carbon airport in Greece since 2016, we sincerely hope this will change, by the way, very soon. We have adopted what we call the Route 2025 initiative, effectively to become a zero carbon airport by 2025, well ahead of the 2050 target of the EU. Confused? Well, I definitely was initially. In simpler terms, we currently offset our carbon footprint by purchasing carbon credits or sponsoring green initiatives, whereas from 2025 onwards, we aim to fully cover our needs from the development of a PV plant combined with battery storage. Currently, we have 8 megawatt plant in operation for over 10 years, and we are in the development phase for an additional 16 megawatt. By 2025, we expect to have reached about 40 megawatts to achieve our zero carbon target with the help of Mrs. Duko as well. Obviously, this is not the only initiative we are undertaking, as the Athens airport community is very large and we are both leading by example and also incentivizing third parties. For instance, we decided to electrify our corporate fleet by withdrawing petrol and diesel vehicles and replacing them with plug-in hybrid and pure electric vehicles. Simultaneously, we required charging infrastructure, and by the end of 2021, the largest hub of charging points in Greece was created and the first at an airport in Greece. In our latest tender for ground handling services, we included relevant wording effectively incentivizing operators to go electric. And you know what? We had a nice surprise, as one of the ground handlers has already converted his fleet, and we are currently working together to install the necessary charging points. We're also progressing numerous other projects such as energy efficiency and optimization, LED installations, cooling, heating optimizations, carbon capture assessments, and many, many more that I will not bother you with. Margaret Mead. I assume some of you know her. If not, she was a leading anthropologist and a recipient of the Planetary Citizen of the Year Award in 1978. What she said was the following: never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Did I say drop in the ocean? Sure. Yet we can do so much more, even beyond our core activities, and we must. By way of example, the Athens International Airport is closely cooperating with the city of Athens for the assessment of Athens as a sustainable destination in the context of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. The outcome of this assessment process will be released in November 2022, and I'm eagerly awaiting for our score while remaining confident. However, the elephant in the room lies elsewhere. I said earlier that airports are only liable for 5% of the aviation industry's CO2 footprint, effectively indicating that air travel and related activities contribute the lion's share. More precisely, it is estimated that the global aviation fleet used some 300 million tons of conventional aviation fuel in 2019, generating over 900 million tons of CO2 as tailpipe emissions and close to 18 million tons of CO2 through transportation of that fuel. Total estimated expenditure, a whopping $188 billion, or 24% of average direct airline operating costs. You can all imagine what picture will be in 2050 if we return to pre-pandemic traffic growth. Whilst technological progress may happily surprise us, as things currently stand, it is highly unlikely that we see a battery-operated commercial airplane anytime soon, if ever, I may add. Hydrogen is likely to be the long-term solution. Today, however, the best option we have is sustainable aviation fuel. But first, an important truth. When sustainable aviation fuels are combusted, they produce nearly the same emissions as jet fuels in terms of CO2 and water vapor. Therefore, the carbon emission savings do not come from the combustion of the hydrocarbon compounds, but rather from their source of production, where there's a net reduction in CO2 emissions. So, in other words, CO2 emission reduction is achieved when sustainable aviation fuel is produced and is actually enough to counter the CO2 emission production during the combustion phase. Roughly 84% of total CO2 produced through the whole supply chain. So, problem solved. Well, not exactly. As you could expect, there's a number of issues regarding sustainable aviation fuel. For instance, while there are many processes for the production of sustainable aviation fuel, its scalability is not granted. This will be dependent on the water, land, energy requirements for the production, and in particular the ability to use green hydrogen versus grey hydrogen, which is mostly produced currently. Current jet engines are not compatible with sustainable aviation fuel, so blending is required, which itself is not a given, as many refiners do not have this capability. Nevertheless, blending conventional and sustainable aviation fuel, effectively creating a drop-in fuel, which can be handled, stored, refueled, and used in the same way as conventional aviation fuel, and does not require extra infrastructure, procedures, or modifications to aircraft fuel systems, is the only realistic solution for the interim period. However, governments, airplane constructors, aviation companies, airports, refiners, and many other stakeholders need to be coordinated to facilitate the transition to sustainable aviation fuel. Governments need to provide financial and operational incentives for R&D in sustainable aviation fuel production, engine technology, availability of land, as well as the upgrade of necessary infrastructure. Aircraft constructors must increase the pace of R&D into sustainable aviation fuel compatible engines. Airports, often in conjunction with the fuel farm operators, need to evaluate what infrastructure will be required and plan for it. All in all, we have a tough road ahead of us. Yet it is critical that the industry lowers its carbon footprint, also ensuring its future sustainability as travelers are increasingly more conscious of their impact on the environment and, if possible, may choose train over plane. So next time you asked in an EU survey whether you would pay more to reduce the carbon footprint of your travels, please, please, please say yes and help us increase the pace of change and innovation for a better future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Excellent speech. Super informative, actually. I mean, I learned a lot. I can't say that I was an expert in the subject, and I feel like I know a lot more now. We have to say goodbye to Maximilian, who's choosing train over plane and has to catch a train right now.
Bad boy.
I'm not deserting you at all. I'm happy that you have a forward agenda for flying as well, because my grandfather was a pilot.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. We're going to move on with the last sort of speech before we open it up to a more fluid dialogue by Lacey Hunter. And I want to ask you the following. So tourism is so much about physical presence, right? Like the physicality is so inherent to the idea of tourism, that you travel to a place and explore it. And I think so much so that often we ignore a bunch of digital solutions that are there to help us make it both more sustainable but also a better experience. And from your experience collectively in the industry, and also from your experience sort of pioneering a product that is very applicable to the tourism industry, I'm wondering if you could share some of your insight on how digital tools can help us improve tourism and make it more sustainable.
Absolutely. Thanks for the great question, and thanks all for being here. It's an honor to be on another Greek House panel, and you all have been great hosts for first time at Davos. I'm also a first-timer myself. So a couple of quick points that it's a bummer that Maximilian had to run, because he did bring something up that in the United States, I'm not from Greece, so don't have the Greek perspective, but we love to say, don't try to boil the ocean. So if you try to solve all the problems at once, you may make no progress at all. So something surely is better than nothing, and often it can be better to start with a very easy to tackle solution. So one of the things that actually came to mind from the panel the other night that I hadn't quite thought about until I did some research today was the impact of water that tourism has. So hearing from Stella at the Global Water Fund really made me dig in and say, okay, what is the tourism industry doing that's negatively impacting the supply of water and how that's being used? doing a bit of research, turns out that to print a single piece of paper, A4, your standard piece of printer paper, takes 10 liters of water. That's not insignificant, and to think about that times the number of brochures and printed things that are produced in the name of travel and understanding and advertising, hey, here's what we have to do, here's where you can go, here's where the best things are, that someone will often pick up, look at, say, oh, that's interesting, and it goes right in the trash. It's not insignificant. So over time, even something as small as transitioning from paper products to QR code-based travel guides not only is something that's dynamic and scalable, that can be changed at the drop of a hat behind the scenes. You don't need to reprint anything. You don't need to change the date. You don't need to change what's on there. And everyone can access it with a smartphone. But to your point, Nikos, you can also elevate local expertise. So learning, and I'm learning so much being here that only 4 of the 10 regions in Greece are really making a dent in terms of, hey, we're generating material revenue from tourism. Certainly the role of the government in elevating the other local expertise is there and could really drive eyes and traffic and interest to the other regions that perhaps are not getting the interest. And that's something that you can do and really at the intersection of technology, visibility, and travel. The technology exists today to really elevate that local expertise. It's newer, but depending on where you sort of nudge your traffic to look and where you want them to go, you can effectively direct that flow of traffic with software. And then you can measure, who is looking at these points? Are they actually visiting? What sort of value are they getting? And communicate with your audience, starting from the airport, all the way through the kiosks to everything that folks see. Welcome to Greece. Scan a QR code. Oh, here on my phone, I can see exactly what there is to do, the best ways to, arrive there, different ways of transportation. And COVID was really tough for a lot of folks, but certainly one of the silver linings, I think, was the adoption of the QR code. I myself was a bit of a laggard in that regard. I'm like, why am I scanning this QR code? Is it going to put something weird on my phone? I don't know about this. But having had no choice going to restaurants and understanding, well, no one's going to hand me a paper menu. Okay, I need to act like a real millennial and scan the QR code and understand what's going on here. It's a normal behavior, and that's a behavioral change that can be harnessed to reduce paper waste, to reduce water usage, and also to really elevate local expertise in areas that you want to drive traffic to. So there are technology solutions today that certainly are capable of meeting that need. And again, to Maximilian's point, I know he had to run, but it's not going to solve the whole problem, but it's a start. And Greece is clearly investing and very vested in innovation and entrepreneurship, and harnessing that ecosystem locally and wanting to be a leader in that domain. And hearing about some of the initiatives that are being undertaken at the airport, this is a chance to show, hey, we're tech forward, we're committed to a zero paper policy or something along those lines that could then take, the labor that you were using or maybe the labor shortages you weren't able to fill and elevate the employees that you do have to higher value add tasks, or simply relegate the 6 redundant questions that you always get. How do I go here? What's the best route to take? Where are the best restaurants? You can do that all with software and present it in a way that's sustainable and scales. So that's just a little bit of perspective that I have. Certainly I don't pretend to be an expert in the end-to-end travel industry, but there are a few easy tactics and actions that I think can be taken today. And Greece seems like a great place to start, and certainly interested in innovation and being tech forward, where really there's an opportunity to, I think, lead in the space and harness some of the new technologies that I am more of an expert in. So I'll stop there, but does that answer your question? Or?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, now's the time for dialogue. So it's great to start it like that.
You can do and say anything. You're absolutely right about what you point out before. We have all the trends of the last 3 years, 20, 21, and 22, as far as we are talking, in the first 3 months. And we know that people change the way they choose where to go and what to do for vacation. We know that they are using all the digital assets that they have in order to book vacations. 45% of the visitors between 18 years old and 44 years old, they book their vacations from the mobile phone. From platforms without any tour operating. They just choose a destination because they want to live the experience. And when they go there, they do the same thing. they live the experience by using all these digital assets that we can provide them. So it's really important to improve. And in Greece, we have the need to improve in these kind of things. In GNTO, we made a significant work the last 2 years to improve, but we have to do more.
On that note, can I also ask a follow-up to you about what is there? So we talked about the need to expand tourism within Greece and to make it more seasonal, right? A more year-long thing. Part of that was the branding, so communicating it to the outer world. What are some of the things that we need to do to get our regions more ready as well? Because we understand this is sort of an effort that crosses multiple agendas, right? Transportation, infrastructure, labor. So what are some of the challenges that you see in Greece, and how can we overcome them?
First of all, I would like to say that it's a real difficult effort to show to the people, to our visitors, that Greece is not only sea and sun, because everyone abroad knows that Greece is a sea and sun destination. So it's really difficult to change this kind of view, this point of view. We're trying to do so. We're in the start of an effort that it has a lot of steps forward, but I think that this strategy is the right one, and I think we will manage to do so. We have a close cooperation with all regions of Greece, even the regions that they don't have expertise in tourism. I think two things are really important. The first one is infrastructure. Public infrastructure, and the second thing is private infrastructure, because tourism developed in regions that there were private investment in tourism, in hotels, in all kind of stuff. So we have a strict policy about investments. Mr. Georgiadis and his ministry are making a great effort to bring investors and investments. We have a great interest for investments in tourism. So I think we're going to need time and focus to these two targets: public investment in infrastructure and attraction of private investments in tourism.
Great. And I have to give my personal recommendation to anyone who's not Greek. I personally think autumn and spring are the best seasons in Greece. So winter is fun. In the Peloponnese, of course. No, but explain. And winter, as Alex Patelis, I think, was mentioning before, we're a very mountainous country. The majority of Greece is mountainous, which people don't know. They assume it's a a country full of just islands and beaches. No, it's a majority mountainous country. So there's a lot to explore. But we are, about to welcome our summer season, which is sort of the crown of the jewel of the crown of Greek tourism. So I'm wondering if I could ask Mr. Lambiris to tell me how is traffic looking at the Athens airport right now as we're sort of about to enter our summer season, and what does this say about your mid to long-term outlook, I guess, about Greek tourism and how it's rebounding in the new COVID reality?
Well, I think you can say pictures 1,000 words. If you come to our terminal at the Athens airport, you'll see what's happening. It's absolutely buzzing. It's absolutely buzzing. Tourism is great. It's a complete rebound. I'm very, very optimistic for this year, for the summer period. I'll give you a few numbers very shortly. I think what is most important is that we've got new destinations that have opened, or significant growth in destinations, especially compared to 2019, which is our reference here. Just give me a second, because it's interesting to see the numbers. So, for instance, USA tourism is up 60% compared to 2019. So that's 60% more in terms of flights, right? It's a flight increase. So that's great. We have the same in Austria, France, the UK. That's not those numbers, they're lower, and there are spenders. We like that indeed. Now, I think what's an interesting statistic, and I'll try and make it as simple as possible, is the following. Using 2019 as a reference year, and looking at year-to-date passenger and flight numbers, and month-to-date, so effectively comparing until yesterday what was happening, I'll give you the numbers, and they're impressive. So year-to-date, in terms of passengers, we're down 26% compared to 2019. Now, this month, we're down 11%. So you can see the trend is going in the right direction. It's even more impressive in terms of flights, which is 12% compared to 5%, right? Which is absolutely great. So I'm extremely positive for this season. I'm sure this trend will go forward. And we'll have to wait and see when we start our new expansion at the airport. Hopefully very soon. Thank you.
Lacey, you have something
Can
to
I ask
say.
a question?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you just alluded to it, but I'm curious to bring up another sort of Americanism. If you build it, they will come. I'm dying to know if this is something that can be disclosed. Back to one of Nikos' questions of how do you get these other areas ready for an influx of visitors? And surely a great way to incentivize that could be to open a new airport. Not sure if that's something that's disclosable, but it sounds like there may be some expansion in the different airline presence in Greece right now. It's Athens or Athens. Correct, but are there plans to expand? Or I was hoping that you could maybe elaborate.
I will answer that.
If you can.
Okay, so there cannot be another airport in Athens just because we can scale it up significantly. So we're currently at a capacity of 26 million passengers, which actually hit in 2019, and hopefully we're going to get there very soon. So we can go up to 50 million in different development phases. After that, maybe your favor happens, hopefully soon. But we'll have to see. So to answer your question, though, how do you bring more people in? So it's incentivizing effectively airlines to come into Athens, and also you're making Athens a destination. So with everything that is going on with Athens, the Athens Riviera, Ellinikon project, a number of real estate projects which Minister Georgiadis and Alex Patelis have alluded to, I think it's becoming a completely different town. And people are coming either for a short break for the weekend or for a longer period of stay, instead of just coming to Athens and hopping onto an island. So they're actually staying in Athens, and that's fantastic, great. And you can see this in the bookings as well. So a very, very positive picture in general.
And my follow-up for Lacey is going to be the following. So I guess you're too humble to talk about your product again. So I will just say a few things. Proxy is sort of an interactive, collaborative map tool, right? If I'm saying this correctly. And I think these two things are sort of the two things that digital tourism really can sort of amp up, right? We want digital tools that are interactive, so we have sort of our visitors being able to use their phones, but to interact with sort of the physical environment, and also collaborative. We want our visitors to be able to use technology in order to network their way into the cities or the places that they visit. So through your product, what have you learned about how technology can help us achieve those two things when it comes to tourism?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. And certainly didn't want to be obviously too self-promotional, but actually the point that was raised about the percentage of folks between the ages of 18 and 45 that effectively shop for where they're going to go and book it on their mobile phone is quite high. That's probably not going to change. And so in short, what Proxy does is enables you to place whatever point in a customized fashion at any latitude and longitude on the map for someone else to view and interact with and understand, including but not limited to linking a website, getting directions, learning more information about it, etc. So instead of someone having to go, if you think about perhaps the last time you booked a trip, I can think about pre-Proxy, the last time I booked a trip, there's quite a lot of manual effort involved. You have to look up where you want to go. You have to understand where it is. Then you have to understand where, how you're going to get between the different points. Maybe then you do a sequence. You probably are keeping it in a Word document with hyperlinks. Maybe this work is typically done by females in the household for travel planning, etc. And then someone is sort of the keeper of the keys of well, where are we going next, and where is it, and how do we get there? And this is complicated. But with Proxy and technologies like ours, you can curate all that information in a single place. It can be shared with a QR code. It can be embedded on a website, which we've seen a few examples of in the States that have been really effective for destination marketing organizations to elevate things like Black and minority-owned businesses, or the road less traveled, where they know this is an amazing best of local destination that wouldn't normally get picked up on Google or TripAdvisor or Facebook because they don't have a big budget. But someone that has trust and has authority, such as a local government, can elevate those destinations and provide them to their constituents in a way that's easy to action and easy to convert on, meaning you can look at it on your phone, click on it. Well, first of all, imagine, if I go there, oh my gosh, look at all these cool things that are around me. I had no idea there are that many wineries or that many hikes, or there were ski resorts in Athens or around Greece. Who knew? So you first of all understand the information geospatially, and then secondly, a lot of this sort of, how do I get from A to B to C and trip planning and what's going to make the most sense is already done for you. And then you can simply just click on the points to understand how do I get there. So that's a way that our technology can certainly help and sort of be, I think, a tool in the toolkit of tourism operators, of municipal governments that want to say, hey, we have a lot of great things to do, and maybe those great things or maybe those great businesses don't have huge budgets to spend on advertising or to spend on keywords or Facebook ads or whatever. They can instead, partner with their local government to put their information on a proxy map and basically be an effective advertisement that's ad-free to get folks to convert and actually come and visit those destinations that would otherwise be overlooked. And it's powered by the local expertise of the in-destination, the folks that actually know what is good to do in Greece. I would much rather learn from a Nikos than from a random search on TripAdvisor. But right now, that's your only real alternative. You're just doing a Google search, maybe TripAdvisor, maybe Yelp. Maybe the things on there are authentic, maybe they're not. Maybe someone's paid to take down bad reviews, maybe they haven't. But there's still a lot of manual work to do that, quite frankly, I think results in fatigue and folks not actually taking the time to really dig and find, okay, what is the best thing to do here? So by sort of front-loading that work and providing the answers in an interactive fashion, you make it easy for travelers to say, oh my gosh, wow, not only can I see this and visualize what I can do when I get there, it makes my trip planning now as a piece of cake. I open my proxy map and I know where to go, or I scan the QR code at the airport and I know where to go and what to do. And I can filter by what I'm interested in. So those are a few applications. But did that start to answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of applications in Greece, which is a country full of sort of hidden gems, which is what you're alluding to. Yeah.
Lacey, I really would have hoped you would have done it for Davos, because I really find it hard finding a restaurant which is open and not taken by some event or something. So it'd be really, really useful, right?
I did do it. Our map is in the Davos Week. If you've seen the DavosWeek.org app, our map is in there, but it's of the events, not of the restaurants, for that reason, because a lot of them either aren't open or are booked out by some event, and so to call every single one, but it's a good application to be sure.
Thank you all for your contributions. I'm going to end with another etymology lesson. We started with one on the first day. So what Greeks, the word that Greeks use for hospitality is philoxenia. What it really means is love of the foreign, and it's a centuries-old concept. And I really believe that it's witnessed by everybody who visits. And it's nice to see this concept that's very archaic and old now sort of being revolutionized and adapted in a way that is sustainable, that is digital, that is friendly, and that keeps growing. So thank you all for your contributions. And some philoxenia, some wine and snacks to end the night. Thank you.